Welcome boys and girls, Christine here with a discussion about the Beastmen in Total War Warhammer 3 Immortal Empires, the bastard race of chaos that no one, including the Chaos Gods, Games Workshop, or even Creative Assembly, cares all that much about. They just get fed scraps here and there. It took them a very long time to fix the Beastmen back in Warhammer 2, and ever since then, all they've really gotten is just the fact that they've gotten some of these Beastmen units, Sangors, Pestigors, Corngors, and soon enough Slangors, I imagine, with other DLCs. And basically, it's going to end up in a situation where if you really want the entire Beastmen roster, you're going to need to purchase 4 different DLCs that are much better than buying any of the Beastmen DLCs themselves. I think that the design intent of the Beastmen in Warhammer 3 is solid, but there are certainly some critical issues that I want to talk about. First off, the research tree, as always, just very limited. I guess it makes sense for a Beastman to a degree or another, but yeah, just not really a great research tree, not exciting all that much. Like, you get some combat buffs for certain units, and you're only really going to use certain units in a campaign because of the way that Beastmen do work. You lack unique mechanics for Legendary Lords with the exception of Tarok, so he's basically the only Beastman Legendary Lord worth playing. Because you can easily confederate all the others in a campaign and get access to them, so what's really the point? Also, Tarok comes in a DLC that is one, I think, cheaper to this day than Silence and the Fury, where Tarok is. And also, Tarok comes in Silence Fury, that's cheaper than the Beastman Race Pack, to this day, I think, and he does give you extra stuff, so why would you bother with the Race Pack? Sure, you can't confederate the Lords unless you have the Race Pack, but that's not exactly the best reason given for why you should care about playing the Beastmen. So, lack of unique mechanics available to them. But beyond that specific problem, it's also to keep in mind that Warhammer 2 worked differently than Warhammer 3. When Beastmen were reworked in Warhammer 2, they were great, they were fun, they were really engaging. And the mechanics that CA introduced there, specifically for Tarok, the ability of replenishing movement range, all that, is something that Creative Assembly has used very well for, say, Khorne. But that's kind of part of the problem. The way the Beastmen work right now is outdated in certain ways. It's more of a pacing and balance issue on the campaign side of things, as opposed to a problem with the core design of the race. So first off, you have limited diplomacy. Now, that's sensical for the Beastmen, but it just means an entire section of the game is locked out from you. Also, a lot of people hate you, but that's perfectly fine for you because, yeah, just more meat to the slaughter. You have powerful armies, and you have powerful heroes, as well as having a huge amount of ambush success chance, and also a stance that allows you to, a kind of stock stance, not necessarily as good as some, not necessarily working in the same way as other stock stances, but still, you do have that. You can stay hidden, you can ambush people, that gives you power, and you're going to need that power because you're a lot of the times in Beastman campaign, especially early on, you're going to have to fight outnumbered, so you better get used to that mentality, and you're going to fight outnumbered with pretty crappy troops in a Beastman campaign. They don't have an economy really, they rely on post-battle loot, but all their units are free, all their armies are free, but they have to deal with unit capacities and army capacity. Now, army capacity is something that is a problem for the Beastmen because there's 2 ways to really increase army capacity. One is to get Ruination level to level 2. Doesn't sound too bad enough until you realize AI is not capable of doing it, and even you as the player just kind of are forced to rush into it. And then you can, of course, increase army capacity using rewards of dread. But that's one limitation and does limit your campaign potential early on, makes the early game of a Beastman campaign something of a chore. It's also the only part of a Beastman campaign where you are going to be in any way, shape, or form be challenged, especially as Tarok, because you've got the Leaf and Art to deal with. Potentially, you don't have to necessarily go to war with the Leaf and Art, but it's recommended just because of the Hearthstone situation. You set up a Hearthstone, you kill enemies, destroy settlements around you. You can play in multiple ways, but the best way to play really is to just rush out there, ambush people, destroy your settlements. And what's kind of annoying about the Hearthstones themselves is like, dependent on the settlement you're placing it in, you might get more or less less regions that are considered part of a Hearthstone site. So for instance, you know, I had the Hearthstone here. If I had put it in the Black Pillar, I would have gotten to less settlements. That kind of difference just drives you crazy in a campaign, because like, okay, I'm not just thinking about attacking a settlement, I'm thinking, okay, where do I put my Hearthstone so that I have a nice loop, so I can get a lot of Mark of Ruination, so I can unlock more armies. It's fine the first few couple of times, I'll say, but if you're trying to replay this campaign, that gets really tedious real quick. Really annoying, because you're not thinking about strategy or tactics. Your thing is like, okay, what's the thing that's going to give me the most points? That's really annoying as a system. Then on top of that, let's talk about unit roster. Beyond the aforementioned DLC situation, you do have a pretty strong unit roster that you may never use much of it. You do have one unit capacity for each unit type, so unlocking the ability of recruiting them is good. Having the Silence and Fury DLC for Regiment's Renown, having all the other DLCs for various units is going to help you out. But here's the reason why you would never really bother with unit capacity. Dread. Dread is the key issue for Beastmen, because it's used for 3 big things in a campaign, and that's the problem. 1, it's used for unit capacity. 2, it's used for confederating legendary lords and increasing your hero capacity. 3, it's used for various upgrades. Dread is gained in battle. Here's the problem. In a campaign, what you figure out very, very quickly is that increasing the capacity of any of these units over here, especially, remember, because you have limited armies, is a waste of time, resources, and energy. None of these units, not even things like Sangors or Korngors, are worth whatsoever increasing capacity. Every unit from here to basically the Giant, and even that's a questionable aspect, is not worth increasing our capacity. And even we can talk about Caspon and Giant. Essentially, in terms of unit capacity, the only units you give a shit about increasing your capacity are Minotaurs, Jabberslaves, Cockatrices, if you have Shadows of Change. That's a fun one. Elemental of Beasts, which requires the Shadow of Change Kislev part, Cygors, and Gorgons. But even then, not all of these units are equal. But the thing is, these units are much more expensive. So you could spend Dread early on, but it's going to screw you in the long term, or you can save Dread to have it later on. Let me just put it like this. As much as I like Sangors, I'm not spending 400 Dread on them when I can spend roughly the same or a bit more for something like a Jabberslave. What do you think is more useful? Sure, the cost increases, but by the time you even consider that, it's not going to matter. Your campaign is going to be over. But you're far better off in a Beastman campaign completely ignoring the unit cap situation and focusing on the following things. Increasing, getting all the other legendary lords of the Beastmen, which all come with special skill lines, horde armies, effects, might even have territory that you can use. So that's one of the things. And heroes. So that's the first priority. And that's going to be a lot of Dread, or a lot of your initial early game Dread. So that's 3,600. It's relatively cheap, all things considered, in terms of confederation mechanics. But it is a very annoying thing that a lot of your early game Dread is going to be spent on that. Then you have hero capacity. Heroes can get expensive pretty quickly, but let me just put it like this. Would you rather have 8 Gore Bulls? Or would you rather have 2 Jabberslaves? Or 3, let's say. I think you know the answer to that specific question. You're encouraged to hero stack, especially as Tarx, because he has the benefit of Cataclysm, which for a certain period of time will severely reduce the cost of increasing capacity for a type of hero you choose, or for Minotaurs if you want to do so. He also has cheaper capacity increase for Minotaurs in general. That's the reason they're comparable to Tangors, but even with that, the cost reduction, I would not bother with Tangors. I would just get flat out, get Minotaurs first. And basically Tangors, Korngors, all these units, like, there could be a lot of varied armies for a Beastman, but you never want to use them. And even when you're done with Legendary Lords and if you increase your capacity by a lot, why would you ever stop increasing hero capacity? A hero, like, especially as Beastmen, where you can use the money, however much you're gaining from post-battle, and there are ways of gaining a lot of money from post-battle, to literally create items in your campaign. Not the best items, to be clear, but they are still items. They're still things you can use. They still give you benefits. So you can make a hero doom stack very quickly if you want to, and you can equip that hero doom stack. So why in the world would you bother with units compared to that, except fluff, right? Like, at this point in this campaign, I'm just getting to a stage where it's like, okay, I've chosen a lot of these Wargors as a benefit, so here's what I'm gonna do. I'm just gonna go to here and just click this button until I've spent all that dread. That's 9 Wargors. That is an army that is capable of standing up to pretty much anything, and I can just fill the rest of them with the one unit I don't have unit capacity for, which is Ungar Raiders. So that is a really, really big problem of pacing, because very few other things are worth it here. You might increase Hearthstones to tier 3 because it's relatively cheap and they're free to build and upgrade. There's various structures for that associated with the Hearthstone, but that's roughly it. You're rarely at risk in a Beastmen campaign. You've rarely got any real stake in a campaign. And then on top of all of that, you have a bad economic system. Consider how it works for a Beastman compared to the Cast Wars. Well, first off, or the Tomb Kings. First off, if we look at Cast Dwarves, yes, you use armaments to increase capacity, and they have their own issues with that. But for their heroes, don't require that. Their confederations don't work on that system. They use different systems, different resources for that. Even with the Tomb Kings, your army capacity is increased through research and the Mortuary Cult, and your hero capacity through the Mortuary Cult. Also Books of Nagash. But your units are increased for structures. So it ends up, when you're playing a Tomb King campaign, you will end up having fairly varied armies, just naturally speaking. I think Tomb Kings, even the way they work pre-patch, were better in terms of variety, whereas Beastmen are very, very one-dimensional. That's the problem. They work, they're strong, they can be fun, but it's just like feeling that one-dimensional playstyle, saving up resources just because it's much better to save up resources and get a lot of heroes, or get them over time naturally in a campaign. Like with Tarx, it's better to save up a lot of dread until he's done his challenge, and then just spend it all on a hero type. With other campaigns, you'd vary things up, but there's almost no situation in which increasing unit capacity is worth it compared to heroes, or even increasing Hearthstone capacity, or getting an extra army through the research, or other benefits, because that's not all. We can also talk about some of the other bullshit that's here, and something that I probably should have invested in. We can also talk about the fact that there's free upgrades over here going up to 2000 dread that increase your hero lord and hero recruit rank to 15. If you think having a bunch of heroes is strong enough, then understand recruiting level 15 heroes is where things get pretty damn crazy in a campaign. Especially when you're considering other benefits that come with that. You're looking at recruiting level 20 heroes en masse once you get that upgrade. So why in the world would you ever bother with units? And that's kind of my big issue with the Beastmen. Bad pacing, bad balancing, just the one wonder resource used for everything. But let me know what you guys think about this. How do you think CA should go around with the Beastmen? I have to say, from my view, if you want to look at a campaign where it's about burning the entire world to the ground. Khorne does it so much better right now. A lot more variety of units, a lot more variety of heroes, armies, even diplomacy. Yes, it's hilarious, but Khorne is actually pretty good in terms of diplomacy. It's hilarious. But you do burn a lot of things to the ground, but then you also engage with other game systems. If you want to, you can just burn everything to the ground, but you've got cults, reselling settlements, building research tree, various benefits, that Skullfront, etc. That is a much more intricate and better system than what the Beastmen have to deal with. So clearly, it's not a question of like every campaign has to be the same. It's a question of like, how do you make a campaign that's about burning the world fun and engaging, and Khorne does that. The Beastmen don't. That's what I had to say. Costin signing out.